So we've gone a couple of miles north of our previous stop. We're in Heil Ranch, one of the Boulder open space trailheads. We've also gone about 200 feet uphill, and you'll notice that there are some pretty substantial changes. We're into some mountain topography here. We're also starting to see the first beginnings of forest cover in what we call the lower Ecotone. There isn't really a clearly defined lower tree line here. Instead, we're starting to see a gradual transition from plains grassland into the ponderosa pine you see behind me. The reason for that isn't strictly because of elevation or because of topography, but instead because of moisture. Here there's just enough more moisture available that trees are able to grow. In this part of Colorado, we're actually seeing that the lower Ecotone is dominated by ponderosa pine, a tree species that we'll be talking a little bit more about in our next stop. In other areas of Colorado, however, you'll see that this elevation is dominated instead by pinyon and juniper. If we were to go south of Colorado Springs, we'd see that pinyon, pine, and juniper ecosystem being sort of that first area of forest we would come to. Here, however, you'll see that the ponderosa pine is growing in sort of an open, park-like environment, not as closed-in forest, but instead with trees growing somewhat scattered across the landscape where there's moisture available. Slope aspect is key here. Trees grow a lot more densely on north-facing slopes or where the microclimate gives a little bit more water. Most of what you're seeing behind me is slightly south-facing, and that means that it's particularly open. This is also an area where we see a lot of interface between humans and wildland. That's a particular risk when fire gets going, and ponderosa pine have a pretty distinct fire ecology as well. If you look pretty far towards the back of me, you can actually see quite a bit of heavily burned area, a pretty high severity fire. So particularly as people are living in some of these areas along the Boulder foothills, that wildland-urban interface is a key environmental hazard.